These are notes continuing for class for April 15th, 2015. Again, we're doing slope-intercept form. And this is in preparation for the TCAP and also so you guys can know how to do a two-step linear problem. So, our new question here. This is the first graph in your notes. Y equals 1/8 x. And as I've said earlier, we love the easy stuff, so I went ahead and plugged in 0, 1, 2, and 3 for x. So I have 1/8 times 1 is 0.13. And then I've got 1/8 times 2 is 0.26. And 0.8 times 3 gives me 0.39. So, here are my points. All I have to do now is graph them. I'm going to go ahead and label my graph. You can probably already tell that this is not going to be a very steep line at all. I'll go ahead and talk about what kind of excuse me, what kind of proportion this is. This would be a direct proportion. As you can see, it's going to pass through the origin, and my x and my y are increasing at a constant rate. So I have here a direct proportion. Okay, so last step here is to just connect my dots. Please do not forget, last step, connect your dots. Please do not forget to connect your dots. Dots are your friends, and so are your lines. Now, we were talking in class today that if this were a road, this would be a pretty gentle slope. If you were running track, this wouldn't be so bad. If you were riding a bicycle, going on the French Open, that wouldn't be too bad. Because if you look at this, it's going to be 8 feet. Let's say this was in feet, 1/8. So for every box, it'd take 8 boxes for it to go up 1 foot. So that wouldn't be too bad of a slope. That's a pretty gentle slope. And since we're on the subject, m equals 1/8. Now my slope is positive because it's going up. And it is a direct proportion. X increases as y increases. And it passes through the origin. Next question we have here, y equals negative 1/8 x. So it's going to be a whole lot like that other one, except this negative sign right here is going to do something to my graph. So use the easy stuff. Here's 0, 1, 2, and 3. Make it easy on yourself. 1 times negative 1/8 gives me negative 0.13. 2 times negative 1/8 gives me negative 0.26. 3 gives me negative 0.39. Again, I'm going to have something that's pretty easy to graph. It's going to be pretty easy to graph this. Negative 1, negative 2, negative 3. So, go ahead and put in your points, 0, 0. So far, that looks like a direct proportion. Alright, and some of you are making your numbers above the line, that's fine. As long as it doesn't interfere with anything and you know what you're doing, that's perfectly fine. I don't have a problem with that at all. And the next one would be 0.26, so not even halfway yet. Next one is 0.39, again, not even halfway. And then connect your dots, just like in kindergarten. Connect those dots. And there you have your graph. Now, if you compare this graph to the one we just did, you'll see that it's the exact same slope, except it's a negative. This time, slope is negative 1/8. And so negative means my slope is going down, my line is going down. And it also means that I don't have a direct proportion anymore, because as x is increasing, y is decreasing, so now I have an inverse proportion. Okay, this is the third graph on your page. So the next question we have here is negative 2.5x plus 4, and 4 is our b, so we'll say b equals 4, m, which is our slope, equals negative 2.5. So b, remember we were talking about this yesterday, we ought to try to predict what b is going to do to our graph. We were saying that this is where it may cross the y-axis. And one of your standards is you have to be able to make predictions. So let's go ahead and see if we're right. So I'm going to go ahead and plot that point. I think we're right. Let's just go ahead and see what happens. Go ahead and fill in your table. So the first one, always choose 0 and 1. It couldn't get any easier than that. So negative 2.5 times 0 gives me 0 plus 4, 0, 4. So we can check that one off. We're right about that. Negative 2.5x plus 4, negative 2.5 times 1 is just negative 2.5 plus 4 gives me 1.5. And my next one is negative 2.5 times 2 plus 4 gives me negative 5 plus 4 equals negative 1, which means I'm going to have to make room on my graph for this. And the next one, which will be 3, negative 2.5 times 3 plus 4 gives me negative 7.5 plus 4, which gives me negative 7.5 plus 4. If you're not sure, just go ahead and do it on the paper. Negative 7.5 plus 4. Okay, 5 minus 0 is 5. Excuse me, that's 7. So 3.5. 3.5 plus 4 will definitely put me up past 7.5. So it's going to be negative 3.5. All right, so negative 3.5. All right, so we're ready to graph. So we have our 0, 4. We have our 1, 1.5. And we have 2, negative 1. And then we have 3, negative 3.5. All right, then draw your lines, and you're done. Notice how that B shifts my graph, excuse me. Notice how that B makes my graph move. It moves away from the origin. Makes it move away from the origin. And notice if my M is negative, I'm going to have a negative slope on my line, obviously, because it's a negative slope. Next question. Today in class we used an example of reversing a process. So I've got Y. Y is over here with my B. And I have to have Y by itself. So I need to do the opposite operation. In order to get Y by itself, I have to subtract 5 from both sides. So I have, when I'm done moving that 5 over, I get 0.25x minus 5 equals Y. And that's okay. I can have it like that. Y can be on that other side. It's perfectly fine. So let's examine this. I'm guessing that because I have a negative 5, that my line is going to cross over the y-axis at negative 5, because that's my B. So I'm going to make enough room there. That's my hypothesis. Let's see if we're right. And just in case it goes up into the positive, into the first quadrant, I'm going to go ahead and label it 2. So I have, let's use our easy numbers, use the easy stuff. So 0.25x minus 5. 0.25 times 0 minus 5 equals negative 5. First one down. Now, 0.25 times 1 minus 5 equals 4.75, negative 4.75. Next one, 0.25 times 2 minus 5 equals, I have 0.50, that becomes 0.50 minus 5 gives me negative 4.5. You can put your 0 in there, it won't hurt anything. And then I have my 3. 0.75 times 3 minus 5 gives me negative 4.25. Okay, pretty gentle slope. You know, it hasn't even changed by 1 yet. This is just a 1/4 slope, a 1 over 4. So my rise, m equals 1 over 4. My rise is, my change in y is 1. That's my change in y. My change in x is 4. So that's a nice gentle slope. It's not as gentle as the 1 over 8 that we had earlier, but that's still a nice, easy slope. Take 4 feet to go up 1 foot. That'd be okay for a ramp, possibly. That wouldn't be too bad. So my first coordinates, 0, negative 5. And my second coordinate, 1, negative 4.75. And my next one, 2, negative 4.5. And my last one, 3, negative 4.25. All right, all I have left is to draw my line, and I'm done. All right, this is your fifth slide, or your 5th graph from the day. This is April 15th. So I have 2/3 x plus 1. Again, let's try to guess where our b is going to come from. Where will that b show up? I'm guessing at the plus 1. Go ahead and label your graph. Get the easy stuff done first. The stuff that doesn't take a lot of time, so you don't get tripped up. Okay, so I have 2/3 x plus 1. Go ahead and multiply by 0. 2/3 times 0 is 0 plus 1. I've already filled that out for you. Equals 1. Next one, 2/3 x. 2/3 times 1 plus 1. 2/3 is 0.66 plus 1 gives me 1.66 with your line, of course. 1.66. I'm guessing this is a positive line, so it's going to go up. Something like that, maybe, because I have a positive slope. We'll see what happens. Okay, next one, 2/3 times 2 plus 1. That's 0.66 times 2. And 6 times 2 is 12, 13. And then I move my decimal over. 1.32 plus 1 gives me 2.32. Lots of nice decimals. Yeah, you have to be able to use these guys. Okay, the next one, 2/3 times 3 plus 1. Can I show you a cool trick? Let's cancel out these 3's, because that's really 3 over 1. And then I just have 2 plus 1 gives me 3. So 3, 3 is my next coordinate. And if I wanted to, I could just find multiples of 3, like that, and cancel out all my 3's. I could say 2/3 times 6, and cancel that out, and I'd get 2 times 2 is 4 plus 1, so it'd be 6, 5. And I could say 2/3 times 9. See, I can do whatever I want to, which is a really nice thing about slope-intercept form. I get 6 plus 1 gives me 7, so my coordinates would be 9, 7. But we don't have as much room on this graph, so I can't really do all of that. I probably could graph those if I wanted to. I do have enough room to get there. So I've got 0, 1. That's where it crosses the y-axis, so our hypothesis was correct. Next one is 1.166. Next one is 2.232. Next one is 3.3. Pretty cute. So let's go ahead and add those other guys on. Here's 6. I'm skipping 5. I don't have to have them all in a row. I don't have to. So here's 5. We'll cross over 5. There will be a coordinate. I'm just not graphing it. 6, 5. Right here. And I'm skipping over 4 too. And then we're going to plug in 9. So 8, 9, 8, 9. Okay, so 9, 7 is our next one. Why not? Okay, here's 9, 7. And let's make our line. Go ahead and draw your line. All right, and there's your graph. Now, we're trying to find the slope. So we have line A here. Here's line A, line B, and line C. And they want you to find the slope. You are very likely to have a question like this. They might even ask you to tell them what B is. So on the first one, we're going to practice identifying B. B on the first one will be where your y-axis intersects with your line. So here is my line intersecting at 0, 2. Go ahead and label your graph. Some of you do label above it. That's fine. As long as you can keep it straight, you know what's going on. I don't have a problem with it. So here I have my first one. My B is going to be 2 for line A. Now my X, this is the part where you've got to know your slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept form, that's your M. M equals rise over run, or you can write it as delta Y, delta X over delta X, which is just, the delta just means change. Change in Y over change in X. So if I'm analyzing this graph, I'm going to look over here, I'm going to say, here's my point, right here. To get up to the 4, I start at 2, go up to the 4, I go up 1, 2, and then I go over 1. So my hypothesis here is that it goes up 2 over 1, if I'm looking at line A. To make sure I'm right, go ahead and fill in your box. So here's for line A, 0 and 2 is your first point. Next point is 1, 4. The next point is 2, 6. So if you're looking at the difference between these two guys, here's 2 and 4, it's a difference of 2. Between 4 and 6, it's a difference of 2. Between 0 and 1, it's a difference of 1. Between 1 and 2, it's a difference of 1. I think I've proven my hypothesis, so I'm going to go ahead and plug that in as my answer. It's 2x. 2x is my M. That's my rise over run. I had to go up 1, 2, and then over 1 in order to get to the next coordinate. So the answer here is 2 over 1 is your x. That's a rational coefficient, even though we don't write the 1, plus 2, which is your b. Moving on to the next one. The next question is line B, and we're going to go ahead and first thing just plug in your coordinates into your box. Use your box, it's your friend. So here, oh, it's a negative slope. I'm going to go ahead and write this on here, that this is a negative. That way I can't forget. Okay, so M, if I go ahead and make this note here, that way I won't forget. So to make a long story short, I've gone ahead and I've gotten my coordinates, I've plugged them into my box. Okay, you can do this. I suggest you make a hypothesis, what you think it is, and then I want you to double check on the graph. So I think from line B, I would say that my coordinates, there's a difference between these guys of 3 right here, negative 3. It's changing by 3. And this is changing by 1. It's a negative slope. So I would say m equals negative 3 over 1, or just m equals negative 3. Next one I have is line C. We're just finding m here. Line C, just because it starts at the origin, it does not mean it's a direct proportion. As you can see, this is a negative slope, so it cannot be a direct proportion. So looking at my coordinates again, I plugged them in, 1, negative 1, 3, negative 4, 5, negative 7. They're in my box. Next thing, analyze the difference between them. So I've got a difference of 3 here, a difference of 2 here. Let me double check my squares. I've got 1, 2, 3. My rise is a negative 3. It's going down 3. And my run is 2, so over 2. So m equals negative 3 over 2. I cannot turn that in for my answer, so I'm going to have to change an improper fraction to a mixed number. M equals negative 1 and 1/2, or you can say m equals negative 1.5.